My parents demanded I sacrifice my college savings for my sister's rent. But my bold defiance exposed their secrets and destroyed their reputation. For context, my dad quit his job a couple of years ago to start a new business. Unfortunately, right around that time, COVID hit, and his business couldn't take off as he had expected. He didn't give up hope and continued to work hard on it. He's still at it, slowly but surely, and they are doing better, which is great news for him. However, this also meant we didn't have enough money to maintain our lifestyle for a long time. My mother has always been a stay-at-home mom, so her starting to work was out of the question because it wasn't something she wanted. Our parents told us we had to figure out a way to live on our own. They would support us until we were 18, but after that, it would be difficult for them to set aside funds for their own retirement while also taking care of us. They had already used a significant amount of their savings, so we could live the way we were used to during the lockdown. Thus, my sister and I were supposed to look after ourselves after turning 18. A couple of weeks ago, I graduated high school, and I'm 18 now. I knew I would have to cover college expenses myself. I had it all worked out because I had been working since I was 16 and had done a couple of internships. I managed to save money from those, and though it wasn't enough to cover college entirely, with a student loan I would get by easily. My sister, who is 22, recently graduated. She had also taken out a student loan but had no savings of her own. Even while in college, she didn't bother to work, which is her choice, and I'm not judging her for it. However, I am judging her for expecting me, her younger brother, to cover the rent for her first house now that she's moving out of my parents' house for work. She and a couple of her high school friends are getting a house, and all of them have paid their shares. But she is a couple of $1,000s short of the expected amount. She doesn't want to tell her friends that our family isn't financially stable because it would be embarrassing for her. I don't understand why her friends would judge her if they're truly her friends, but that's why they can't cover her share for now, which she would pay back later. Our parents had already told us that after turning 18, we shouldn't expect financial support from them, so that leaves me in a tough spot. The worst part is that she didn't even come to me herself to ask for the money. Instead, she told our parents, who then spoke to me on her behalf. To be honest, my sister and I don't get along well. We're very different, and I was glad when she announced she was moving out. Having her move back in after graduating college for a few weeks until she found a job was tiring for me. Last week, when this happened, we were all living together. I'm starting college in a couple of months, and my uncle and aunt have signed off on my loan. My sister was supposed to move out a few days ago, though I'm not sure what happened with that. 3 days before she was supposed to move out, my parents came to my room and told me she was short a couple of $1,000s. They knew I had been saving for college and wanted me to dip into those savings to help her. They reassured me she would pay me back at the earliest, but she could have spoken to me herself, which would have been more respectful. Honestly, I didn't know how she could afford the rent at all, since to my knowledge, she hadn't worked a day and had no savings of her own. Apparently she did have some savings, but it wasn't enough. That wasn't my problem, though. I told my parents it was her fault for not working during college, especially knowing our parents wouldn't support us as adults. Her inability to afford rent was a problem she created, and she would have to deal with it herself. Besides, covering my college expenses was far more important than her moving into a house with her friends. I thought my parents would be reasonable and understand why I didn't want to share my savings with her. So far, they've never treated my sister and me differently. Instead, they threw a fit about my behavior, calling me selfish. They thought it would be easy to convince me, but when I refused, they started fighting with me. After a heated argument, my dad snapped and told me that if I was going to be selfish and not share my savings, it meant I didn't value my family as much as they expected. They would behave selfishly in return and ask me to leave the house. My only options were to help my sister or get kicked out. I chose the second option because it was humiliating. I never expected my parents to use my reliance on them, at least until I made it to college, against me. I guess their priority was my sister, possibly because they didn't want anyone to know our family was struggling financially. If my sister had been honest with her friends and had them cover her share, she would have had to reveal our financial situation. Since her friends' parents know ours well in our close-knit neighborhood, my parents didn't want her disclosing anything. They put in a lot of effort to hide our financial struggles. No one in the family knew except my uncle and his wife. My uncle, my dad's older brother, was one of the first investors in my dad's business, so he was aware of it. Initially, my dad was against me having my uncle co-sign my loan application, but eventually agreed, since being a co-signer for both my sister and me could backfire. Even though he didn't like being more in debt to my uncle, he let me go to him for help. I'm attending college out of state, which is even more expensive. I knew their reputation and money meant a lot to them. After the fight, I left home, unable to deal with being kicked out for refusing to play by their rules. It was insulting and humiliating, so I decided to take advantage of their obsession with reputation. After the argument, I started packing my things immediately. My parents didn't try to stop me. That night, I packed everything I needed, stuffed it into a bag, got a cab, and headed to my uncle's place. I felt guilty about bothering him, but when I explained the situation, he welcomed me to live with him and his wife for as long as I wanted. Their kids are grown and living independently, so I'm staying in my cousin's room. When I left, my parents stood at the door without trying to stop me. When my uncle called my dad to discuss what was going on, my dad made it clear that if I wasn't going to put my family first, they had no place for me. It was ironic they called me selfish when I thought they were the selfish ones. For the past week, I've been living with my uncle and aunt who have been kind, but it hasn't taken my mind off things. They keep telling me things will be all right and that my parents will come to their senses and apologize. But I'm not so sure. Last evening, I was feeling particularly low. I don't know what came over me, but I felt vindictive. Instead of venting to my friends, I posted on Facebook, spilling every detail of what happened and completely exposing my parents. After posting, I set my phone aside and went for a walk, knowing my parents would blow up my phone once they saw it. I hadn't blocked them because I expected them to reach out, but they hadn't bothered to check on me in the past week. When I returned from my 30-minute walk, my uncle and aunt were serious. They had read my post and felt it wasn't necessary, but since I had posted it, without speaking to them, all I could do was apologize for not informing them. I was feeling depressed and wanted to get back at my parents. They looked disappointed but didn't say much, so at least I'm good with them. When I checked my phone, I had several missed calls and messages from my parents, as expected. The messages accused me of being selfish, proving I was a bad person by ruining their reputation. They claimed they were right to ask me to leave because I only thought about myself. They said I made it sound like they were the bad guys, even though I chose to leave because I'd rather abandon my family than help them. Most of the messages were angry, and I felt vindicated because they were feeling as betrayed as I had. While reading them, I received a call from my mother and decided to pick it up. I regretted it immediately because she was crying as if someone had died, and I could hear my dad screaming and cursing at me in the background. It was hard to understand her through tears, but she was trying to get me to take the post down. Many relatives had messaged them saying it was unacceptable to force me to help financially since I'm young and have my own future to think about. They thought it was unfair to take money from one child to give to another. My mother claimed I hadn't told the full story and framed them as villains. Honestly, I only shared my side, and it's not my fault our relatives disagreed with their behavior. It's social media. I can share what I want, and I had the decency to tell the full truth without hiding details. She argued I should have shared how they always supported my sister and me when possible, only expecting us to help each other now because it was difficult for them. She wanted me to post about how extravagantly we lived when my dad was making money. I started feeling guilty because that was true. My sister and I were spoiled, and they ensured we were well cared for when my dad was doing well. Still, I don't think that excuses their recent behavior. Most importantly, they were upset because I went public with their financial struggles, knowing it was the last thing they wanted people to know. Despite receiving support from family and friends on social media, I felt guilty about the conversation with my parents and how my uncle and aunt were acting. It made me feel bad about what I did, and I considered taking the post down. Before doing so, I wanted to ensure I was actually wrong and not just manipulated into thinking I did something bad. So, am I the asshole for posting on social media and exposing my parents and their financial struggles? Edit. My relationship with my sister hasn't been good for a long time. We were close when younger, but for the past 4 or 5 years, she's been acting weird. I don't know why. Maybe it's her friends, who are mean and snarky. She didn't bully me or my friends in school, but she had a reputation for being a bully, which is part of why I don't get along with her anymore. I can't stand bullies. She's changed a lot, and not for the better. We hardly speak, and when she sent our parents to ask me for money, it felt weird. Even though we weren't on great terms, we were at least on speaking terms, and she could have come to me herself. If she had, I might have let her borrow the money. Her behavior has been awful, with a terrible attitude, which is why I don't speak to her much anymore. Update 1. People in the comments had mixed opinions, and I decided to go with my gut. I took the post down because despite receiving support from relatives, it didn't mean much. It was superficial, and no one who called out my parents for being unfair reached out to me. They just wanted to be part of the drama. I took the post down because I'd gotten back at my parents, so the purpose was served. 4 days have passed since I last spoke to them, and I deleted the post this morning. After that, I decided to make things right with my uncle and aunt because I owed them an explanation more than my parents. They tried to be there for me, and I hadn't spoken to them before posting. Things were weird between us because they didn't agree with my approach. I woke up early, took the post down, and made breakfast to surprise them. They were surprised and, when I apologized, said it was fine. They were just taken aback by the post. They apologized for acting weirdly, unsure of what to say to make it better. It was a misunderstanding, and we talked it through. I explained I was upset and humiliated by my parents' treatment. Though grateful for my uncle and aunt's support, I felt I had to get back at my parents. Maybe it wasn't right, but I needed to get it out of my system. They understood but didn't agree with posting it online for everyone to see. They explained that many relatives were jealous of my uncle and dad because their lives had been great in comparison to those. Relatives were happy about my dad's struggles, which is why they showed support in comments but didn't reach out to me. They didn't care about what I was going through. I learned my lesson and told them I took the post down. They were happy to have me stay, saying I'd always been a good kid and reminded them of their sons. I also vented about my sister, upset that she didn't ask me for the money herself. I wasn't expecting an explanation, but they looked surprised. They didn't understand why she had our parents ask me because she had already asked them for money to cover the rent, and they thought they had covered it all. I was shocked because I didn't know this. After talking more, I learned that while my sister was in college, she knew our parents couldn't support her. She contacted my uncle and aunt for help with non-college expenses, which they covered. She wanted it kept secret and promised to pay them back. A couple of weeks ago, she asked them for a couple of $1,000s for her share of the rent, and they agreed since she had a job and would start repaying them. Now I'm confused. If she borrowed money from my uncle for the rent, why did she ask me? It doesn't add up. My uncle and aunt suggested I talk to her myself to clear the air, as we have a lot to discuss. I guess that's what I'll do to find out what's going on because this is fishy. Update 2. 2 days have passed since my last update, and after much deliberation, I decided to speak to my sister to get to the bottom of things. I texted her to see if she'd be willing to talk, and she agreed easily. We spoke last night for a while, and it turns out she wasn't at fault. She had borrowed money from our uncle for part of the rent, but one of her friends decided to live with her boyfriend instead, meaning everyone had to contribute extra because one person dropped out. The house was expensive, so she asked our parents for help just this once. She told them to help her themselves, not to ask me. She didn't know they had approached me until I told her. Apparently, my parents told her we fought because I demanded money from them for my college savings, and they refused. She believed them, and had no idea about the real reason. We guessed our parents didn't want to give her money from their own pockets, so they came to me, making it sound like she was asking. We worked that out and then discussed our sibling relationship. I was honest, saying I distanced myself because she changed, becoming mean and a bit of a bully. I thought she'd deny it, but she admitted she was terrible in high school. In college, she changed and wanted to work on our relationship. But I seemed closed off, so she didn't try. We decided to let the past go and work on our relationship for the future. It was clear our parents took advantage of our strained relationship to play us against each other. My sister moved into the new house with her friends. She made an excuse for only having part of the rent. But thanks to my post, her friends figured out the situation and offered to cover her until she could pay them back. They didn't judge her, which was great. I got to the bottom of things and worked things out with my sister, so I'm happy with the situation. My parents and I still haven't spoken, and after what I found out, I don't think we will anytime soon. My sister might stop speaking to them too. Update 3. I recently started college, and I love it. A few months have passed since I last spoke to my parents, and they've blocked me. I don't know why, since I should have been the one to block them based on their actions. My sister doesn't speak to them anymore since learning the truth about what happened. We're actively working on our relationship to return to being the siblings we used to be, and it's going well. I'm really happy about that. My uncle and aunt have kept in touch, and it's a happy coincidence that one of my cousins, their son, recently started a project requiring him to visit my state often, so I'll see him soon. I don't miss my parents much anymore. I hope we can make things right someday, but until then, this works fine for me. As I sit down to reflect on everything that's happened over the past few months, I find myself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions that I haven't fully unpacked until now. Starting college has been a fresh chapter, one filled with excitement and new beginnings. But the shadow of my family's conflict lingers in the back of my mind. The betrayal anger and hurt from my parents' ultimatum, coupled with the unexpected reconciliation with my sister, have left me in a strange place, somewhere between relief and unresolved pain. Writing this feels like a way to process it all, to make sense of the tangled mess of feelings that I've been carrying. When my parents demanded I use my college savings to cover my sister's rent, I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I had worked so hard since I was 16, taking jobs and internships, scrimping and saving every penny to secure my future. College was my ticket to independence, a way to build a life that wasn't defined by my family's financial struggles. To have that threatened, to be told I was selfish for wanting to protect what I'd earned, cut deeper than I can fully express. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the betrayal. My parents, who I thought understood my dreams, turned my hard work into a bargaining chip to maintain their image. The moment my dad told me to leave if I wouldn't help my sister, I felt like I'd been disowned, not just from the house but from the family I thought I knew. That night, as I packed my bags and left for my uncle's place, I was consumed by a mix of humiliation and defiance. Humiliation because I never imagined my parents would use my dependence on them as leverage. Defiance because I refused to let their manipulation dictate my choices. Sitting in the cab, watching my childhood home fade into the distance, I felt a hollow ache in my chest. It wasn't just about leaving the house. It was about leaving behind the illusion that my parents would always have my back. I kept replaying the argument in my head, wondering if I could have said something different to make them understand. But deep down, I knew their priority wasn't me. It was their reputation, their need to keep up appearances in our close-knit community. Living with my uncle and aunt has been a lifeline, but it hasn't erased the pain. They've been incredibly kind, welcoming me into their home without hesitation, and I'm grateful every day for their support. Yet there's a part of me that feels like an outsider, like I'm imposing on their lives. Their kids are grown, and their house is quiet, filled with memories of their own family. Staying in my cousin's room feels like borrowing someone else's life, and while they assure me I'm welcome, I can't shake the guilt of being a burden. I try to make up for it, cooking breakfast, helping around the house, but it never feels like enough. Their kindness has been a balm, but it also highlights what I've lost with my own parents. The decision to post about the situation on Facebook was impulsive, driven by a raw need to reclaim some control. I was so angry, so hurt, that I wanted my parents to feel the weight of what they'd done. Exposing their financial struggles and their ultimatum felt like a way to hold them accountable, to make them face the consequences of their actions. For a brief moment, seeing the likes and comments pour in, I felt validated. People were on my side, calling out my parents' unfairness. But that vindication was fleeting. When my mother called, crying, and my dad screamed in the background, the guilt hit me like a tidal wave. I hadn't anticipated how much it would hurt to hear her sobs or to know I'd caused them pain, even if they'd hurt me first. The realization that I'd aired our family's private struggles for the world to see made me question if I'd gone too far. Taking down the post was my attempt to make things right, not just with my parents but with myself. The support from relatives felt hollow, more about gossip than genuine care. I didn't want to be the center of that kind of drama, and I didn't want to be defined by my anger. Talking to my uncle and aunt afterward, making breakfast to surprise them, was my way of grounding myself, of reconnecting with the people who've shown me what family can be. Their understanding, even when they didn't agree with my approach, reminded me that not all family ties are broken. It's a strange contrast, feeling so supported by them while feeling so estranged from my parents. Reconnecting with my sister has been the most unexpected part of this journey. For years, I saw her as someone I no longer recognized, someone who traded our childhood closeness for a mean streak I couldn't stand. Learning that she didn't ask our parents to come to me for money, that she was as much a victim of their manipulation as I was, shifted everything. Our conversation that night was raw and honest, and for the first time in years I saw glimpses of the sister I used to know. She owned up to her past, admitting she was terrible in high school. And I could tell she genuinely wanted to rebuild what we'd lost. Letting go of my resentment wasn't easy, it's still a work in progress. But it feels like a weight has been lifted. We're not fully back to being the siblings we were, but we're trying, and that's more than I ever expected. Starting college has been a bittersweet escape. I love the freedom, the new faces, the chance to carve out my own path. But every milestone, my first class, my first exam, comes with a pang of sadness that my parents aren't part of it. They've blocked me, and while I tell myself I should have been the one to cut them off, it hurts to know they've chosen to shut me out completely. I don't miss them the way I thought I would, but I miss the idea of them, The parents, who spoiled me, who made sure I had everything I needed when times were good. I keep wondering if we'll ever reconcile, if there's a future where we can talk without the weight of this conflict. For now, I'm focusing on what I have: my sister's efforts to reconnect, my uncle and aunt's unwavering support, and the excitement of seeing my cousin soon. Looking back, I'm still not sure if I was wrong to post about my parents. Part of me feels justified. I told the truth, and it helped my sister's friends understand her situation. But another part of me wonders if I let my anger cloud my judgment, if I could have handled it privately and avoided the fallout. What I do know is that this experience has taught me about boundaries, about standing up for myself, and about the kind of family I want to build moving forward. I'm learning to let go of the guilt and embrace the life I'm creating, one step at a time. It's not perfect, but it's mine, and for now, that's enough.